Hello everyone and welcome back to another market review. This is Silent. Today we are looking at the NASDAQ December contract for 2025. We are starting off with the weekly chart, and automatically you can see how we've continuously delivered to the downside this week. We've dug down a little bit more today and dropped down into the constant encroachment of this large wick here. As long as we stay above the 25,197 level, I'm going to remain bullish and anticipate that the low of the week has been put in, and maybe we can settle tomorrow somewhere in this area. If all else fails and we deliver down through this 197 level, we could expect a run under this candle body and under this swing low here on the weekly chart. We'll get into that on the lower time frames. As we drop down into the daily chart, we can see those weekly wick levels. I've extended our gap that we've been tracking here through time. Those quadrant levels were salient today. We did not end up delivering into the daily fair value gap, and we left it open. So we utilized this wick from yesterday as a turning point and stayed heavy after crossing over the opening price of the current day's candle. And we traded through all of these quadrant levels again here. Found no support or willingness to deliver up into that range or find any support inside this wick. So we delivered through and came just above the constant encroachment of that weekly wick. This would be our target for tomorrow if we deliver through the 197 level. That's that swing low on the weekly chart. As we drop into the 4-hour chart, we can see how price stayed heavy after returning into this 4-hour buy-side imbalance. We traded lower, and on this reattempt higher, it failed, and a strong delivery through this up-close candle. So all of this price action today was a reclaiming of this bearish order block, and we careened lower into this sell-side liquidity that was produced yesterday, and again a delivery back into that 4-hour buy-side imbalance from the 20th. On the 1-hour time frame, we can see our weekly profile on a closer inspection here on the lower time frame. I've marked out all of our daily delineations at midnight, extended our midnight opening price, and I brought down the new week opening gap levels. We kept that high in place from the 1-hour redelivered rebalance, retested that, and displaced under after creating that turning point yesterday. And that's what price utilized today, this sell-side imbalance here. It was a pretty standard kind of day, just a really big smash down immediately on the open, and we found weakness at the low of that old new week opening gap inside this wick here, and it just smashed down on all of those lows that was produced. On the 15-minute time frame, you can see where I was getting my initial bullish bias from. I was anticipating the Asia range being higher than yesterday to be a turning point and potentially see a reaccumulation higher from the new week opening gap here, but we obviously found no favor in that. After returning to the Wednesday sell-side imbalance here, price stayed heavy and just shifted all the way under those lows that was created during the pre-market, and it stayed heavy through the midnight opening price, delivering through London lows and staying heavy, only retesting this range with a wick on this delivery here, and that's a strong drop down into the low of the new week opening gap, a retest of this fair value gap at the low of that new week opening gap, and it sold down into Tuesday's low, consolidated a little bit through lunch, and then had a pullback going into the end of the day before selling off right on the market on close. We could have anticipated this being a reversal characteristic because the Asia range from today is lower than yesterday's, but seeing no willingness to traverse through the previous day high was kind of the first signal that this idea is not going to play out, and in fact it's going to stay heavy. So we had a higher Asia range than the previous 2 days. We had a lower one, and today's Asia range was kind of in the middle of those two ranges, so it was a toss-up. Really, you would have just had to get on board with seeing a sell-off if you're anticipating that bullishness right off the bat. Seeing that shift under there like that, you're just going to have to either sideline or get on with bearishness. On the 5-minute time frame, we had news at 11 o'clock and at 3:30, so all of this consolidation and run up was kind of our Judas swing for the day, and then we began dropping lower heavily going into the New York time period, and that's when we really start to speed up and accelerate lower. This is just before our news event for the morning, and we cascade lower, and this is when Trump was speaking. So all this consolidation is brought from that at the end of the day, and the volatility kind of dried up shortly through the lunch period, and that's what brought us our retracement going to the end of the day. So seeing this drop down, it was pretty hard to get on board with today. So in my opinion, this fair value gap here being a short was the most obvious opportunity to take a trade today. So returning back up into that gap at the low of the new week opening gap is a very strong characteristic of a continued sell-off. So taking entry here and riding it to Tuesday's low. Probably the most obvious trade that I could see that developed during the New York session. On the 1 minute time frame, all I'm doing is adding our first presentation fair value gaps of the day. We can see how price put a breaker over top of the first presentation of the morning today. And so we drop down initially, trade above it, take out short-term buy side liquidity, and then it smashes lower with no retest. Price stays heavy, consolidates here, and then has a retracement into Wednesday's first presentation fair value gap. And that's what our selling opportunity is from the higher time frame 5 minute chart. That's that development here, and all throughout this, very sloppy, choppy, and hard to read. Going into the afternoon was also kind of difficult. There was a lot of choppiness back and forth between the first presentation initially during the open of the afternoon. We trade above it and then consolidate, do a reversal here, and this is a fractal of a first stage distribution here, and then coming down through the PM session first presentation, we rally up, and that's our second stage distribution for a strong sell-off going into the end of the day and taking out some short-term lows from the lunch session. Alright guys, so that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you learned something. If you found anything insightful, please let me know in the comments. And as always, leave a like and subscribe. I will see you all tomorrow.